who bothers to show up on here today. So, alright, there is the, let's get all the junk off of, pops up on the screen as we do this, and phone's ringing up a storm. So, sorry. Well, in case you can't tell, I'm not in the office, I'm not in the garden. I'm sitting on Central Avenue in St. Pete at 21st and Central, so if you're in the area wandering around, feel free to come on by. Wow, there's already somebody else on here. Oh, you're all showing up. That's awesome. So I apologize for any of the interesting characters who may end up behind me, and the little bit of distracting background noise. So hopefully y'all can hear me okay. Feel free to, and I'll explain why I'm sitting out here in just a minute. But feel free to let me know who you are, where you're from. It's always fun to see who all's on here and from where. And if you're nearby, just pull up a chair next to me and we'll just babble away in front of everybody here. And hopefully my connection does okay and my battery will survive for the whole 2 hours out here. And if you don't know, this is your first time showing up, just if you've got any questions or thoughts that you'd like me to cover, just, sorry, there's strange bugs showing up in my computer. Just feel free to type them in the chat there and we'll get to them as quick as we can. I'm trying to be a little bit better at covering a specific subject every time we do this, and as I get better at it, you know, I'll actually announce it ahead of time. But don't let my plan for a theme for this slow you down from typing any random question about herbs, Western, Chinese, you name it. And I know there's always a few acupuncture folks on here as well, and might answer a few acupuncture questions if it gets really boring and slow. So all you herb people, don't let them get it in. No, I'm just kidding. And I am stalling for another minute. I'm going to get started here right at another minute and a half. And then we'll get started with all our official announcements and Babylon about questions. Today, I'm going to be, I don't know, I was trying to think about, you know, it's Earth Day, and was looking for what should I do for Earth Day for a theme. I was like, I didn't feel like talking about gardening. Ooh. All right, Rodney, clearly you're going to be a pain in my butt. I can tell you why. That's just smart money on that. Yeah. If nobody can see it, why do hot dogs come in packs of 10, hot dog buns packs of 8? I'm going to say that way you have to continually buy more. It's all about the money, right? Well, on that note, hey, Laura, we're gonna, and actually, Laura, and it's so funny, I may have chose this as a subject last time, I just like talking about it, but for Earth Day I thought I'd talk a little bit more about the spiritual side of herbalism, but you know, if you want to know about what to do for your stub toe, I'll talk about that too. Alright, looks like it's officially 6 o'clock, so I can start talking like a crazy man. If you don't know it, sorry, I'm sucking on a lozenge. If you don't know it, I'm Bob Linde. I'm a registered herbalist and acupuncture physician here in sunny St. Petersburg, Florida. I am the owner of Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies and the School of Herbal Studies. And come Wednesday, I will officially also be the owner of Traditions Teas, Tonics, and Coffee. Because I didn't have enough to do, I decided to start a coffee trailer, or tea and coffee trailer, and put it in the back in the garden. So after Herb Day, we'll be legal and inspected as far as I know. And sorry, that's the drunk pedal bus behind me that's been so entertaining sitting out here today. Oh, jeez. All right. I'm so prepared. I literally didn't even have paper to write the questions down on here. So come after Herb Day, we should be legal, and we've got Mr. Fans out in the garden with some shade and chairs. So Thursday through Sunday you can come. use our Wi-Fi, bring some food if you want, sit in the garden, wander around, whatever, get a cup of tea or coffee there. I made some cool herbal blends. Maybe I'll talk about those next time. So you can find out more about all the stuff, traditionsherbschool.com and acuherbals.com for more about the clinic. This school, we teach both a Western and a Chinese program, with as well as lots of standalone classes that usually on Thursday and Friday nights. Sometimes we have some standalone weekend intensives. And with the acupuncture and herbal therapies, we've got practitioners there 6 days a week, both acupuncturists and herbalists. Not everybody needs acupuncture. And then 3 nights a week, interns, both from the local acupuncture school. I supervise them practicing on Monday nights for reduced rate clinic. On Tuesday nights are my Western herb students getting supervised, practiced, going through people's health histories and coming up with herbal formulas to help get them balanced out. And then on Wednesday night are my Chinese herb interns doing the same thing. So lots of opportunity. Also, if you didn't know it, we've got I've been saying 800, and somebody said I think we have like 2,000 different plants and jars that you can buy by the gram there in the clinic. So if you've done your own research, if you've got a herbal formula that another herbalist given you that you'd like to get filled, you can jump right in there and just say like, hey, I need 5 grams of that and 10 grams of that, and we'll measure those out. I will say though, if you come into the clinic and you say, hey, what do you got for stage 4 cancer? They're just going to say an appointment. So, and whether you get tea or not, obviously we encourage you to always come by, enjoy the garden, sit in a hammock and hang back there and relax. We really want to see some more humans enjoying the half-acre medicinal garden that we've got behind the clinic. And if you don't know it, not tomorrow. Tomorrow we've got a plant sale going on and an herb walk. I think I'm doing an herb walk at 10 o'clock, just as an Arbor Day kind of thing. But next week on May 3rd, we've got my favorite day of the year. So I would say anybody that's within an hour drive of here, y'all should be coming by. There's parking on First Avenue North and South. The doctor's office and the church across the street from us has given us permission to use their parking lots. But it's a great thing. There's 2 lecture tents going on. It's actually class day for my senior Western students, so they're teaching classes. They had to produce a product and they have to represent it out in the booth that's dedicated to them and be able to talk about their product, and hopefully people buy some of their stuff. They were all supposed to have enough to sell, but it's an opportunity for them to play with labeling and coming up with names and going through that business side of herbalism, which the part that everybody missed. Hey, Steve. So they're excited. They're all going to be doing about a 15-20 minute lecture inside in the air conditioning that everybody can attend and ask questions and so forth. There's also, I think we've got 30 vendors that are going to be there, all herb related. On Herb Day, you got to have something herby there. Lots of plants. I think we've got 3 plant vendors there. We have herbal ice cream, which is just super cool. The tea trailer will be there, and I always make some weird foods for people to sample. So the foods aren't for sale. I want people to experience some of the medicinal foods that are out there from a variety of different cultures. So a little bit of everything. I used to focus primarily on Chinese herbal stuff, but I really kind of had been neglecting my Bahamian roots. So now I got some chicken foot souse and some cooked greens and a couple of other cool Bahamian things. And this year I'm still experimenting with some recipes, but I'm going to be making some things with bugs, and so we'll see how all of that goes. Promise I'll eat them first. I won't a lot of times I just whip things together, but the bug cookies and some of the other things I'm planning on doing, I promise I will try them on myself before I feed them to everybody. Yeah, the herbal ice cream. Hey, Susan. The herbal ice cream, I think, is everybody's favorite. Of course, I'm making sure that's right next to the tea trailer because I usually buy them out. I'm just going to pack the freezer full of all their stuff when they leave and I'll buy it all. All right, let's let me also I want to start for a few minutes, and I think it's really cool. We've got Susan in Mexico, and I know she sent me a video a while back about I think it was family that was sitting there doing a limpia, where they basically, I think that was an egg limpia and maybe a plant limpia. And we got Laura on here down in Ecuador, and both of them are well versed in spiritual practice stuff. And so I want to kind of introduce that idea, because we usually think of just herbs as this is good for cold and flu, this is good for Hashimoto's. Promise I didn't forget you, I will get there. And if anybody has to run away, I do record this and upload it onto the YouTube page for the school. So you can go to YouTube and check Tradition School of Herbal Studies, and I've got the last 4 years or whatever of these recorded that I do every month. So it's always interesting when we look at the way herbs are practiced these days. We're frequently looking at the chemical constituents, which are important, like especially from a safety perspective. And we say, like, here's the active ingredient, here's this, or this has an effect on the citric acid cycle, and we're looking how an herb impacts the biomedical aspect of things and how it can relieve pain. And that's important, and it moves us forward sometimes. And for anybody who's been on here before, I always ramble on a lot about energetics. And it's funny because we have the physical constituents and physical actions on the body. This lowers blood pressure, this lowers blood sugar, this raises white blood cell or platelet levels. And without a doubt, those are important things. And that's kind of that beginning level stuff to learn. But then when we say about this is a warming herb or this is a cooling herb, oh, nice. That's funny. I was actually going to use that example, Susan. Now we're talking about energetics. And so it can be energetics of something like warming or relaxing or toning. It can be releasing. And that concept of energetics is one of the things I babble about a lot, because it is, when we look at the traditional cultures of the native cultures, indigenous, all over the world, and whether we're talking about the Celts, whether we're talking about the Quechua or the Shuar, whether we're talking about the First Nation people in North America, it doesn't matter. But all of those people, they 1,000 years ago, when they were practicing herbalism as their primary form of herbal medicine, they didn't have labs, they didn't know about chemical constituents, they weren't isolating compounds, and so they had a different system of understanding the nature of disease as well as the nature of plants. And so that was the energetic idea, the energetic system of why we would choose a particular plant, why we would combine plants together for this individual and their unique case, rather than here, this is good for everybody with insert symptom here. But what you haven't heard me babble a lot about, we've touched on it a time or two, is another aspect, which is the spiritual aspect of plants. And I don't mean smoking weed. That, you know, in some cultures that is a sacrament and that's an option. I will come back to that, Stevie. Ashes and Tony. It's always a trick. I try to look at myself on the camera and not get distracted by the cars and stuff going down, but I also got to remember to look over at the chat. So if I haven't mentioned something, you type into the chat that's a question. If I haven't said something or you haven't seen me reach for the pen, put it back up there because I missed it. Excuse me. I had some good curry goat right before I came here. So the spiritual aspect is, how do we connect with the plants themselves? How do plants take on our spiritual or emotional burdens? How do they let us release some of those things that seem to attach to us? How do we feel connected to a higher power or some aspect that is beyond what we understand? And obviously there are, it can be used really, I would say, to connect to us, or to any god or religious practice. And ayahuasca is the popular example right now. A lot of people, when they do hallucinogens, and I'm not going to over focus on hallucinogens, but they are a part of the spiritual practice of herbal medicine. But when we start to look at our hallucinogens, whether those are mushrooms, ayahuasca, San Pedro cactus, so there's all of these plants that, and again, we can go down this biochemical DMT, blah, 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 blah. But if all it was a single chemical, that we are releasing this chemical in our brain that makes us see pretty colors, it doesn't explain why every plant has this unique properties and patterns with that. And sorry, Laura, I'm going to totally pick on you for this one. I remember first time I did, actually it was not the first time I did ayahuasca, it was probably the third time I'd done it. And I basically felt like I had been possessed by a bee, and for just to keep it light, I was basically sitting there wiggling around doing the bee dance on the floor. And it was a pleasant experience, but I'm sure it looked a little odd. And the shaman who was leading the thing, he comes over, and he was carrying some flower water, and he blows the flower water on me, and it kind of stops everything, and he goes, "Bob, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yep, I'm fine," because it probably looked like I was having a seizure. And he goes, "Okay," and he blows some smoke on me. And I picked up exactly where I was, but for that 30 seconds to a minute, however long it was, no colors, no bee dance, no hallucinations, as sober as the day is long. Stopped for a minute, and he facilitated that, and then basically did something to, again, allow me to go right back where I was to get back up. And so as we start to look at things not as a biochemical reaction of DMT or this particular compound does this, but how is this plant going into us and opening us up to different ideas? And for so many of these plants, it's not just the plant, but it is the combination of a healer, a shaman, in conjunction with the plant that opens us up and allows us to process in some way. And when we think about how, and I will stick with the Christian faith only because it's the one I'm more familiar with, but I would say in many faiths, not all, but many, we look at a pastor or a priest who isn't themselves creating God-like things, but they help us to process, to connect with that higher power, God image. And so in the same way, the shaman is the facilitator of communication with something that is beyond our understanding, which is this plant spirit idea. And so, I'm starting with the whiz bang right at the top here. But this idea of shaman as facilitator, I think, is more the image, because they're not physically doing anything. They sing songs, they blow flower water on you, and so forth. And we see this cross-culturally, that there is a facilitator for that, and facilitators frequently spend years learning how to appropriately facilitate that process. So I'll take it down to a little bit. I meant to grab some plants, but again, some of you haven't heard this, and I'll pause. We had the local chapter of the American Herbalist Guild. Every year on Earth Day, they get a group together and they come and volunteer and help pretty up the gardens and pull weeds and replant and do all the things that honestly they get away from us. And going into the summer, it's really nice. With next week being Herb Day, it's so nice to have a group of people, and sometimes it's 2 and 3. And today we probably had, I'm going to say, through the whole morning we had 10 adults and about 8 kids. Ruthie brought some kids in, and I mean little ones. They were like this high. I'd have been a little taller than that, but not much older. And they did a great job pulling weeds, and just, it was really fun to see how the garden came alive with these people who had come there only to care for the plants. And so got so much done. And I knew they were coming, so I got up early and threw a bunch of all my pairs of gloves and some tools and threw them into my truck, and I haul in there, and I stopped for some watermelon actually at Publix on my way in, and yay. And then, you know, I had to go and stop by Bula and got my little bit of kratom for my focus juice, and I jumped back in the car and I'm hustling, and I turn the key and nothing happens. And this is a problem I've had before. So some sort of transmission cable broke, and so I was like, I don't have time for this. And so I locked my truck and got an Uber, or actually, I take that back. Dave from Bula gave me a ride to the office, and ended up spending way longer there at the office. It was really exciting and lots of stuff to do. And lo and behold, by the time I got back there and got AAA to tow the car, Bob Linde's, where I usually take it, was already closed. And I was like, all right, well, I got this Herbal Forum I got to do tonight. So of course it's rush hour, so the prices get tripled on Uber to get home. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go find a place with some Wi-Fi, get some food. And so lo and behold, this is why we're in the middle of the city and party central on a Friday night here in St. Pete. So ended up stopping at Speakeasy. They have nice Wi-Fi and these nice tables outside in the shade. So I do digress. So there are other things that we do in with our Chinese and Western senior students. We do a camping trip every year. It's 24 hours in the woods, and so noon to noon, Saturday to Sunday, and lots of fun. We make all this yummy food and fire. And this last year we had a new location that was on the Mayaca River. And the last thing that we do, and I'm going to come back around and say the first thing that we do. The last thing we do is, after we get cleaned up from breakfast, is we take them out and set them with a plant or a tree. Yeah. Ooh, it's a long one. Sorry, I've got to read here. Awesome. For those, actually I will read that because I don't know that everybody can find it if they're on their phone or something. Super cool to witness for sure what I was talking about, where the shaman as facilitator take time to form a deep relationship and trust between plant and practitioner to open up a channel of communication to gain the plant's wisdom. Just like in any relationship, ayahuasca, building trust, to get the deeper into the plant's medicine. Yeah, I always say that's not a recreational plant, without a doubt. You know, and there are plenty of recreational, pretty color plants as well. They still have power, but they seem less offended if we dabble in them. So the last thing we do is we sit people with the plant for an hour to just sit there and hang out. And with the idea that if we can focus and connect with the plant, that they have a message for us frequently. And it may or may not be profound, but if we think about the way plants, they are living, and as we explore plants, we are finding out more and more, in some ways they are a sentient being, just different from us. We have a central nervous system, we have our brain, this collection of nerves, and in plants it's way more spread out, and it's more communal, as far as it's a lot of it dependent on an external good bacteria in the soil that allows for this connection to the whole. It helps in their feeding, where our microbiome, our good bacteria, soil stuff, is on the inside of our body, where theirs, as far as we know, is still on the outside. And because they grow and move at a slower pace than we do, they seem to respond at a in a different way than we do. If somebody goes boo, I'm going to jump, right? And so we have this quick response to things. Where plants, we go boo, it might get around to turning around and saying, I wonder what that sound was. So if we think about the ability of plants, and I say trees, plants can do it too, and we'll talk about how plants do it. But trees, because they are strong, they can move and bend with the wind, with the storms. They're rooted in the soil. They're grounded. We use that term a lot. And I always say trees have the ability to take on our burdens. That they don't seem to struggle if we unleash our woes, our troubles, our concerns, our sickness. We can leave those with a tree, and it won't be hard. And so I would say half the people, when they take our students out camping, we sit them with a tree. Oaks are a classic, but there's other trees out there as well. They all kind of have a different focus and energy in them. And so many of the people with the live oaks, which is really important tree here in Florida. And the live oaks, when we sit, folks, I always find that when we sit moms with the live oaks, half of them will come back in tears, that they don't even know why, but somehow they're able to relax, to let go, leave the challenges that are, I'm quite sure, huge for a mom to bring life into the world, and as they leave home and so forth, that they've got a lot of stuff they held on to. And so I will say that a quarter of the time, I tell my clients, my patients, like, you need to go out into the woods, find a tree that calls to you. And how's the tree call to you? We'll talk about that next. And just go and sit there, lean up against it, climb up in it if you're able. Bring some water with you, bring an offering with you. And like, what's an offering? Tobacco's a classic, it can be sage. I would actually argue any smelly plant will do. You can leave hair behind. You can leave urine behind. For women, they can leave menstrual blood behind. So there's lots of options of how we leave an offering. I always say, like, this is a David Winston classic. He's like, you might tip the driver or your waiter or waitress, but like, tree doesn't need your dollar bill. So don't leave it money. That's when we say bad words, we use an oak toothbrush, right, Laura? She's referring to something I teach on my air blocks of my favorite to use a oak twig for a toothbrush because of the tannins. And that'll go back to Stevie's question about toning plants. You can tie all this crap together. So the reality is, hugging trees, we make jokes about, some of us, about being tree huggers, and it's like, we're better people because we do. We are in touch with our feelings enough that it's okay to hold on to a tree, because in some way the tree holds on to us and supports us. And trees are non-judgmental. So, if we speak about anything from what's bothering us, our anxieties, our fears, our traumas, where you're always concerned about whoever's hearing you may be judging you. And so that challenge of dealing with that, of like, if there's another human hearing me, that judgment keeps us from speaking our own truth and exploring those things. Trees have no judgment. I'd say dogs and cats are good for that too. Or, Lisa, if you're on there, horses. So the idea that we can feel safe to speak whatever is on our mind, to be able to say those to a tree, is one of those things that may be the first time anybody's ever done that. So I love them for that. The other thing, and I always say the first thing we do that when we get out on that camping trip is what's called a limpia. And that's a conjugation of the Spanish word limpiar, to bathe. But in this case, it is spiritual bathing using plants. And that spiritual bathing, again, this is one of those things we find cross-culturally, and in that Judeo-Christian idea of baptism, where we dunk you in the water and now you're cleansed, you're brought out pure. So we do smoke. Smudging is a type of spiritual cleansing using burning plants and resins and so forth. And with the Limpia, we're actually taking, let's say, usually with a fresh plant that grows in the area most commonly, and we wipe off people's stuff. And I always say we're all walking around carrying a lot of shit with us, and so if we're in negotiations and these high pressure things, like you literally feel dirty at the end of it. Buying a used car, you always feel like I gotta go take a shower after this, and you got ripped off. And so how do we remove this spiritual energy that attaches itself, that we feel things are stuck on us? And I always say middle school sucked for everyone. So if you were not the bully but the bullied in middle school, like you went to school in fear and you came home feeling like just burdened with this yuck, in whatever scenario, when you just feel like somebody gave you something that you didn't want, spiritually or emotionally, and it stuck to you. How do you remove that? It's like, just don't make it. Like, it's easy to say those words, but somehow we need a ceremony process to remove things that are stuck on us. When we look in a lot of traditions where spell casting and curses and things like that are put onto people, then how do we break those off of us? How do we prevent them entering into our home? And so people carry talismans, usually, not always, made out of plant matter. People nail things over the mantle in their homes. They plant trees and bushes around their businesses and so forth. And that's using plants from this spiritual protective aspect. And usually, not always, those plants are selected obviously through historical experience, but they're frequently aromatic, smelly things, or have a particular color. So for spiritual connection, we look at our blues and purples to keep things away, yellows, oranges, and reds off. And there's exceptions to all the rules, but generically I'm in the ballpark there. And so back to my Limpia. Sorry, my ADD's kicking in today. The idea that we take a group of plants that are aromatic and wipe our body off, and we can do it to ourselves, or if we have somebody, herbalist, shaman, some sort of a facilitator, they can do that for us. And so that process of starting at the top and wiping down, getting every nook and cranny that you can, and taking time. And I'm going to make fun of us in our Western culture. We're in a hurry. I'm the worst offender of that. I'm always in a hurry. I do not know how to walk slow. But if we take our time, we're literally, think of it as shaving every inch of your body. We're wiping everything down to remove the crap that has burdened us and stuck to us over as long as you've been alive, or from a particular day. You can also use perfumed water, so a flower water, an infused water with aromatic plants. We can dip the plants into those and wipe it down. We can spit those on somebody. It comes from us to wash that away, so it's somebody giving their energy to wipe it away. And we can literally, like, you don't have any plant matters, you live in the desert, who knows, you don't want to get Olympia with a cactus, that might hurt. We can actually just take a cloth, dip that into that infused aromatic teas, and literally wipe us off, literally washing ourselves with this scented water. That can be done to start a ceremonial process that can be done before ayahuasca or San Pedro, any of those. It can be done as a way to start or end your day. It can be part of a seasonal ceremonial process. And there's so many different ways to do it, but the other reoccurring thing that we see through a lot of ceremony like that is sound. And so I know I frequently will choose certain plants to accentuate it that make noise when you rattle them. Song is used to help kind of push it through, and it can be something as simple as just an expression outward of shh, that we're making a sound that helps push the plant medicine through. Yes. Sometimes the Limbias are irritatingly long. Where like, I have to get every skin cell and wipe it clean. Somebody's got to be pretty damn dirty for that. But yeah, it can be a process, without a doubt. And so, but this is the power of the plants. Not only can they heal our physical ailments, they have the ability to balance out our constitutional energetics, but they can take on this spiritual emotional aspect, and that can be either to remove this more spiritual burdens that are put on us, or let us see a higher understanding of things, i.e. hallucinations and so forth, or clarity, depending on your point of view. And again, this is not unique to Central South America or Mexico. This isn't unique to a particular tribe in North America. We see this in the Aborigines in Australia. We see this in the Celts, have their own version. The Norwegians, the Scandinavians, their own reason. So it is one of those things. Oh yes, yes, without a doubt. And it can be celebration of a birth or preparation for death. It is a ceremony. The idea of the Limpia is nice because although it's more powerful done by a trained professional, insert the word shaman here, or curandero, I'm not sure how that'll come out on Talk to Text, Susan. I can't see Talk to Text. I don't even know if it's on. I assume it is. But we can do those things ourselves. A mother to a child, or father to a child, husband to wife, or wife to husband. So there is, or person to yourself. So it is what it is the Martin Luther of spiritual realm, that it allows everyone to administer Olympia. There are other versions of it that don't involve plants. There's the famous ones in Central South America and Mexico using the egg Limpia. Wow, I'm shocked. So for anybody who doesn't know, Susan is deaf, so it comes out with this with Talk to Text, and she's trained me to try to enunciate a little bit better. And when I use a word from another language, I'm never quite sure how that's going to come out with that. The worst is Chinese herbs. Those are challenging. Oh yeah, thank you. So we can also burn plants. We can fire, smoke. So that idea of smudging, sound, drum circles and drumming. Sound smudging is a very powerful tool. I'm not gonna bring it back to plant stuff, but we also have things. It's funny. In a noisy motorcycle, sorry. We also have ceremony, like we talk about hand fasting in some of the Celtic traditions and so forth. And so down in the Bahamas, there's a daughter vine. We call it love vine. The Chinese, I got to type this in because I know this won't translate. In case there's any Chinese herb folks. Oops, spell it right, Bob. and that's daughter seed, or daughter vine. And so we call it love vine. And so it will bind you to something or someone else. And it's considered a horrible invasive, it's semi-parasitic, and literally it climbs over trees here. And so this idea of it literally attaches itself, usually through the roots. Yes, you are correct, Susan. And so this is a semi-parasitic plant. It will go into the soil, but attaches the roots and does suck some of the stuff off of that. But then it covers, and for part of the year, it will literally envelop a tree or plant. So when we use it for tying ourselves to another person, I always say, careful what you ask for, because then you are bound to them, for better or worse. And it is hard to disentangle yourself from that person. But we can also bind ourselves to inanimate objects, other ideas, and so forth. So we have a number of trees, the gumbo limbo, which is a Florida native, Caribbean native. I assume it's on coastal, Caribbean coast of Central America, maybe even South America. And it's famous if you're walking around. It's called tourist tree because it looks like the sunburn and the bark is peeling. It's kind of orangey colored bark. It's related to frankincense. The sap is burned as smudge, the bark is burned as smudge, but it has this unique characteristic that we can carve things into it. So when we carve things into it and they stay as long as the tree will grow, it creates permanence. And there's a duality to this permanence, because we can leave something behind that we don't want to be a part of us. We can carve a representation of it into a tree and it will stay there. Or if we want to create permanence of a behavior, a thought, an action, a person, we can also attach it to us by going through that ceremony of some sort of symbolism to attach it to the tree. The other one, I don't know if I can spell this. Vitae. Oh, I think I spelled it right. Lignum vitae is another tropical plant. Grows, as far as I know, from northern South America through the Caribbean into Florida. Here we have a really beautiful one here at the school, and this is, I think it's in like the third densest wood in the world. That it is so dense that you throw it in the water and it sinks. Was used to make the bracket that held the shaft of the first nuke sub back in the 50s, 60s, whenever they made that one. Old Ironsides, the Constitution, was made of that. The belay pins, because it's so thick with oil, it kind of self-lubricates. And this is one also, it's the national flower of the Bahamas, the national tree of Jamaica. And it's funny, one of the Bocote, I've heard of Bocote and I don't remember much about it, but it is used, it's called Northern Palo Santo. So when we look at Ecuador and a lot of South America, there's a very aromatic tree that's burned as smudge. And so if you ever had like these kind of pieces of wood, this is from a tree ideally downed by lightning or natural growth that falls to the ground and is then divided up and burned to start and stop ceremony, kind of the way that we do with sage, the desert sage, to smudge things. So that doesn't grow up this way. So it's not native to here. So every native culture has a plant that, or a tree that used for ceremonial and smudge and so forth. So the Lignum vitae is one of those, and also it's another one that is creates permanence. And so things are attached to the tree to keep it away or to immortalize it. I'm going to only talk about a couple, and then I actually am going to answer all the questions you guys already posted. And for any of you who are just joining us, feel free to post your questions on here about herby stuff, Western, Chinese, you name it. I will do my very best to answer questions about it. But for Earth Day, I thought I'd go take that down the rabbit hole of the spiritual aspects of plants today. What was I? Oops, know how to spell. Really, I do. Moo. I think I got an extra N in there. Anamu, which is also called Guinea henweed. The islands we call the Guinea henweed. And I was just, it's funny, I was doing an interview today at the clinic, and I was taking around and just kind of showing them the smelly things and the good tasting things, the bad tasting things. And I was like, here, this is a smell, not taste. And so I mashed up the leaf of the Guinea henweed, and I was like, here, smell it. I was like, garlic and burnt rubber, especially when the smells get, at certain times of the day and certain times of the year, the smells really get intense on that. And so it is a medicinal herb that we use for more physical medicine, anti-parasitic, anti-cancer, things like that. But it is also something that we do, you can nail it over the door frame or your windows in your home. It breaks or prevents evil eyes and curses. And it's funny, again, smelly plant, the stronger the smell or the stronger the taste, the more powerful the plant is. But what we see, and this is me slowly moving it back into the physical realm or the energetic realm of herbal medicine stuff, is when we see a plant that is anti-parasitic, when it is used for pests, that we put it in our beds and under our beds to keep the bed bugs out and all the other critters that tend to wander about in our sleeping quarters, especially when we used to sleep on dirt floors or just woven mats above it. That if it's good for physical squirmy bitey things, it is also good to keep away evil spirits, bad dreams, and negative energy, frequently curses and evil eye kind of stuff. And the idea of, if you've ever had a mosquito in your room at night with the lights off trying to sleep, you know that that is a demon. And so how do we make that mosquito that's buzzing around our ear, driving us nuts, how do we make it go away? With smelly stuff. And so for those pests that we don't see, that are given the names of evil spirits and so forth, those smelly things, oh my God, I just had the name in my head that we called them in the Bahamas, and the name just flew out. It's the same term they use in Jamaica, and I can't believe I can't think of the name. Yeah. So really good question, Laura. Thank you. And in case you can't read that, do you think that plants have dark and light, or negative and positive spirits? Does that depend on how the practitioner uses it? And I would say, I'm sure there are trees, the machinelle tree that is the most poisonous tree in the world, that if you sit under it will burn the skin off of you. I don't know of a positive use for that from a physical or spiritual medicine aspect, and it may be because not my area of expertise. But I would say so many of our plants can be used, the same plants that we can use to cast a curse will break it. And belladonna is another good example. That one can be very positive or very negative, so dependent on the the facilitator for that. Yeah, medicinal. Yes, that's, you actually spelled that right. I'm sure I pronounced it wrong. Talk to text if you got it. That. Yeah, Google that, Susan. You will be horrified. It grows here in Florida and throughout the tropics. I'm not sure how far that plant goes around, but I've saw it as a kid once, and I've never found it. Misha, who's a herbalist, graduate down in Sarasota, she went into the Everglades, and that's been her life goal, was to find that plant. And she said she found it down there in the Everglades somewhere. Yeah, you got it. But so many of our plants can literally kill you physically, forget spiritually, or save your life. And it is a question of dosage and application and combination. Those same plants that are used to break a curse or to cleanse us can also make us sick. If we start to look at angel's trumpet, and that is frequently used in spiritual work, and it literally a little bit too much, and I mean just a gram, and you can kill somebody. People who aren't trained in it have dabbled in it. And Laura, I don't know whether that's part of your training. I know it's part of the traditions in that area, but it lets you see death. So it will bring you to the edge of death. It will show you your death and things like that. It is really only used in the more extreme cases because of risk and power. And so in the same sense, people can use that inappropriately to kill people, or to put them into a coma and things like that. So there's definitely the ability of every plant to be good or bad, both from a physical and a spiritual perspective. What else can I say about all of this? It's like, I do want to get to the more physical, herby stuff, etc. How'd that go, Laura? I have played with it enough to feel some discomfort, but never to any extreme. And for anybody who's just jumping in here, I see our numbers always change a little bit. Feel free to type something in the chat if you got any questions or comments. And I've got a couple things lined up here. Boy, I'm going to start with the easy one. I'm going to come back to the Hashimoto's. So, Stevie, you asked about toning herbs. And got to explain the term toning for those who are not in the know for energetics. So, for the Chinese, if any of you are Chinese herbalists on here, the term tonify means to nourish. So we have blood tonics and chi tonics and things like that. And so if we're low and we want to build it up, we tonify it. Western herbalists, when we say tonify, we want to improve the tone of it. So the turgidity of it, the action of it, whatever that may be. So somebody who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, where their tendons are hyper flexible, their tendons lack tone, and we can use herbs to improve the tonicity of that, so they're not so stretchy, and so their ankles don't roll and their knees don't go backwards and disconnect and things like that. So the term tone, depending on who you're reading, may have a slightly different inference to it. And many of our chi tonics, our chi nourishing herbs, also are EDS. Oops. EDS. Sorry, I'm typing this. I'm typing that in for Susan for the talk to text. Hey, Taylor. You missed all the good stuff. So I'm going to come at it from the Western herbal toning idea to improve the tone of a tissue. And so when we're talking about toning, we're talking about tissue states with that. And many of our herbs that are toning have tannins in them, and so think tea. So things, the tannins is an alkaloid that literally will tighten tissues up. Oak is a really good example. So we use white oak, and all the books say white oak. Any oak will do. It could be a live oak, it could be a turkey oak, it doesn't matter. All the oaks are full of tannins. Here in Florida, our rivers are literally black rivers. It is from the leaching of the tannins from the various trees around there, oaks being one of them. So don't get hung up on the white oak. You don't need to pay money. Go clip a branch of some live oak down the street. And yes, so it is specific for loose bowels. So after you've had food poisoning and you kind of got like loose watery stools, maybe hemorrhoids because you got food poisoning, had a rough 3 days, and now you're just kind of like, I need to tighten everything back up so stuff stays inside. So you can use that topically or internally. Laura said varicose veins, yeah, totally topically. Soaking like if ankles, the spider veins and things like that. Then that will help to tighten those tissues up. Oh, you were saying oak isn't great for that, but yes, let me come back to varicose veins. Varicose veins. What else do we? So, oak's a really strong one. It's a little hard to drink. And everybody says, the inner bark of white oak, you can rake up, get some green leaves or something and totally use those. It's totally fine. You can break off some twigs. Is it as strong as the inner bark? No, it'll work. It's totally fine. It tastes nasty anyway you slice it. So we can use that for prolapsed organs, prolapsed bladders and things like that, prolapsed uterus, varicose veins, internal and external. We can use that for bowels where there isn't good peristalsis. There's a laxity to our bowels, and so we're getting loose stools, maybe undigested foods. So we need to improve the tone of that. It can be congestive heart failure. It can be a laxity in our arteries and veins where we get easy bruising. What other good examples of lax tissue? It can be weak muscles. We can have the hypermobility issues, the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and there's a lot of subcategories of that. And I would argue, and this is where the fun of understanding the concepts of energetic medicine, and that is, and I've probably told this story, but there's always new people who need to hear it. I had a woman who came in with narcolepsy, nice lady, and ridiculously healthy, like was a yoga teacher, ate probably as perfect as a person could, did not have a stressful life. And narcolepsy is considered a genetic condition. It's a question, is it genetic or is it autoimmune? And there's great debate on that, so nobody's quite decided that yet. And so she would sometimes be sitting in teaching a yoga class, and all of a sudden she'd just be like, and conk out. So that's where you kind of fall asleep for no reason. And I knew what it was in theory, but I'd never seen a case of narcolepsy. I think my mom dated a guy once who had it, and I remember being like, that's weird. I was probably 8. And so one of the things to do, and for those of you who are clinicians, it's one thing to Google a particular disease or disorder. It's another thing if you have it, you understand it the way no doctor will ever understand it. And so we don't have to know everything as an herbalist. So one of the best things to do is literally talk to your client and say, like, what's that feel like, or how does that manifest for you? And so I did exactly that. And I was like, I know what narcolepsy is, and I know a little bit about it, but I was like, what's it feel like? Can you, like with seizures, a lot of times people who have a seizure disorder, they can tell you a few minutes before they have a seizure that it's coming. We actually have service dogs that are like, will grab that they're for detecting seizures. The dog can tell that you're about to have a seizure and pull you down to the ground. So she was like, well, I guess I kind of do. And it's like, it feels like my eyelids get heavy and they fall down. And to me, that's a prolapse. That's a type of laxity. And I used a cool Chinese formula for that. So different from everything else. But I've now seen probably 3 or 4 cases of narcolepsy. And all of them describe it similarly. And don't assume that everybody experiences this exactly the same. And I gave them all Buzong Yi Qi Tong. So a classic Chinese formula roughly means raise the central qi. The chief, there's a bunch of herbs in there, but the chief herb amongst them is the astragalus, a Western herb, Huang Qi. And all of the people I gave that to, I want to say they had at least a 50% improvement with less episodes of narcolepsy. And I'll take that. Since nothing really works particularly well for that. So, sorry, I'm going to be a little ADD today. One of the things I didn't talk about is we can wear plants, right? We talked about nailing them around our house and planting things like grew around our house for protection. And there's money plants that we can do to try to bring in prosperity and wealth and things like that. But a lot of you have seen me wandering around say, ooh, why do you wear these weird ate-up looking red beads? Well, and I get these from one of our graduates, Rhonda, who's got but I always want to say bodega. She doesn't have a bodega. She has a botanica down on 1st Avenue North and 28th Street or 31st Street. I think it's 31st Street and 1st Avenue North. And it always go in it's in a strip mall. Beautiful place. She's redone it. Every time I walk in, I'm awed. But that's where I get mine. It is meant to provide protection for us. We were worried about sending it through customs, Susan, because there was also a plant involved. I knew that I couldn't send that through. So yes, we have yours sitting in an envelope, and if you want, we can probably send it out. Just the rosary peas. And I will say, I actually feel uncomfortable. Every once in a while, I forget to put this on in the morning. I'm rushing, I'm distracted, whatever, talking on the phone at the same time. I'll forget to put it on. And I probably should keep one at the office for those days when I screw up like that. This is deadly poison. If I chewed on this, I wouldn't make it. Literally, one seed chewed up will kill you, will kill an adult. I know people are like, I ate one once when I was a kid and I didn't die. It's because you didn't chew it, you swallowed it. And so once you break the skin, then it releases the poisons in there. But this is supposed to keep negative energy, negative spirits. The way I always talk about it is I'm wearing a deadly poison around my neck. Like this is enough to kill a restaurant full of people, this whole necklace. And so if death comes up to me and he sees, as I'm working on a really sick patient, death walks up and is like getting ready to take that person. And he says, oh, I ain't going near this crazy guy who's like literally wearing poison around his neck. And so it chases away death and negativity just a little bit better. I also find from a more physical standpoint, this is my little fidget. So for us ADD, ADH things, we like to play with things, and this helps us focus actually, is to play with it. So when I think, I sit there and I grab it, and you don't see it, but I'm sitting there not actually counting them, I'm just running them through my fingers, and that's why they're called rosary peas. These are frequently the rosaries, and this does grow wild here in Florida, Central South America, it's everywhere. Oh, sweet. Where were I? I was talking about narcolepsy tonifying. There we go. Toning herbs. So a lot of times when I'm talking about plantain, I'm talking about oak, we're talking about astringing, which is oftentimes a part of toning. But toning doesn't have to mean drying or astringing. Toning can also be moistening. So think of a dried sponge, right? And a sponge should be flexible and resilient, that we can stretch on it. And so it's actually, you can tear a sponge when it's dry really easily. We can get scissors and cut them in 2 seconds. But if we add water to it, it absorbs those fluids, and now it becomes pliable and stronger and more resilient. Bye, Susan. So we can nourish things with blood nourishing herbs, or fluid nourishing herbs that improve the tonicity of a tissue. And that really baffles people sometimes. So it can be astringing, i.e. drying, and toning, right? Because if we have leaky gut, we literally, the gut has these spaces between the cells that are too big. And so if we kind of tighten those up and astringe, it gets a better circuit. We have leaky blood vessels, right? Then we can actually go both ways. We can nourish and astringe. But sometimes you just need moistening, nourishing herbs. So the tonifying herbs really is this huge category that if the herb you're giving is improving the functionality or the tissue state, it would be considered a tonifying herb. So I'm going to do many astringing herbs are not tonifying herbs. Not all moistening herbs are tonifying herbs, but some are. And then we just kind of have to look at the action, and we can pull out an action of an herb by combining it with other herbs. Plantain has plantago, which is the weed, plantain, not the banana. Plantain's the common name. Has tannins, and we can use that to moisten and nourish and dry. And so some of these herbs really have this multitude of actions to them that we can, when we combine it with other herbs, will accentuate a particular aspect of that herb in order to bring that astringing or nourishing or tonifying product. Hopefully that answered your question, Stevie, a little bit. All right, and I'm going to do my station identification here, and then I'm going to do Hashimoto's because we had a question on that. If anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat, and I will add it to the queue as far as that goes. If you don't know, if you're in the Tampa Bay area, Herb Day is not tomorrow, but in next weekend on Saturday. Be there, be square. I'm at Speakeasy Daniel. It's like, come on, join me. I'll be here for a little while longer. I'm going to get an Uber about 8:30 or so, I think. And so if you don't know, I'm Bob Linde. I'm a registered herbalist and an acupuncture physician here in sunny St. Petersburg, Florida. Oh, so sunny today. And the owner of Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies in the Traditions School of Herbal Studies. And now I can actually say Traditions Teas, Tonics, and Coffee Trailer, as well as the Traditions Plant Nursery and Gardens. Whew. You can find out more about all of that at acuherbals.com or traditionsherbschool.com. Be sure to check the recording of this and all of the past open forums. Be sure to check them out on YouTube, the Tradition School of Herbal Studies YouTube page, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram and yada yada yada. And if you don't know it, Herb Day on May 3rd is a free event from 10 to 4 with 30 vendors, awesome music like the Urban Gypsies, and Kaylee, I don't know if you're on here, but I forget the name of your band. I'm so sorry. You and Joel will be playing there in the morning, I believe, and Barney We'll be playing in the afternoon with the Urban Gypsies. We've got 2 lecture areas, vendors, a bunch of weird foods, and that should be the launch day of our tea trailers. So lots and lots of plant vendors. So if you didn't get them all at Green Thumb Festival this weekend, we got all the cool medicinal plants. There's not a lot of medicinal plants at Green Thumb Festival, unfortunately. I have to look pretty hard for them when I find them there. Oh, and by the way, we do this the last Friday of every month. I'm not usually in the middle of downtown St. Petersburg, though, when I'm doing it. So I'm sitting on Central and 21st outdoors because I'm stealing the free Wi-Fi here at Speakeasy Kava Bar and enjoying their product. And so every Friday, or actually not every Friday, that would be horrifying. My brain would explode. But we have, at the clinic, 6 days a week, we have clinicians, herbalists, and acupuncturists available to take care of all your healthcare needs. And 3 nights a week, we have acupuncture interns on Wednesday night. Oops, I gotta make sure I still got juice. I'm going through my battery power. I did not get a chance to charge this up. We'll make it. I got an hour of juice left. I might have to end a few minutes early because I am not plugged in out here because it was even louder inside, believe it or not. Oh, nice. Hey, Terry. Oh, nice. I love it when we get people from another country. We got Ecuador, Canada, Mexico all representing here. I love it. It makes me want to do it again next month. So we're always here on the last Friday of every month. And you can send in questions ahead of time. Or, you know, I enjoy the rush of trying to field questions on the run. And I don't know, it's so funny. Mel Castings, I never know say her name right, Castings, and Thomas Easley and I did this past Tuesday. We did kind of a roundtable discussion on poop, which seems to be my favorite subject, and I'm sure it's archived somewhere, so and so I had so much fun talking with those two, doing a round table. I'm gonna have to ask him if he's got that archived on YouTube or something, so we can share that far and wide. So I thought it was a really informative, getting all 3 of our different perspectives on a variety of common issues, and I guess that was on Zoom, and so a few people were able to jump on there and ask questions during the thing as well. So that was a lot of fun. So I sent them a note saying, like, I had a blast doing that. We got to do that more. So hopefully we'll find another date that works well for all of us. But what was I saying? Oh, Hashimoto's. All right, that was enough of my station identification. So Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroid disorder, and I will say I've treated my share of Hashis. It's a pain for everybody involved. We do have a practitioner at the clinic, Trisha, that is her area of expertise and focus. It's on herbs or treatments for conditions like, oh, good one, degenerative disc disease. Cool. No, I will babble on that a little bit because yes, I do have thoughts on that. So Hashimoto's, it's underdiagnosed. Usually, you know, they just check your thyroid stimulating hormone, the TSH, and you're like, oh, it's fine. And the Hashis, you know, it's always weird because it tends to fluctuate in and out, as all autoimmune disorders do, and it can hypo, you know, when the thyroid's jacked up, it can make you crazy, anxious, hyper, rapid weight loss, and anxiety, insomnia, and I would say is dangerous. The hypo aspect of it, weight gain, depression, fatigue, and the meds don't work really well for that. A lot of times they find it easier to destroy your thyroid and then just give you medication for it, which it may be an option, but I always say try a lot of things first. And what we see I know. I'm trying. The gods may be stopping me this year as much as I'm trying. I'll tell you later. So with most autoimmune disorders, what we find is there is something causing inflammation in the body, and it kind of gets this perfect storm together. Yeah. And so what happens is it's usually a stressor, and not like, oh, I had a hard day at work, like a stressor. And I'll rattle those off in a second. And this one I find is one of the main drivers. It may not be the primary, but it's one of the main aggravators of it, and that's a food sensitivity. Nightshades, and nightshades are anything in the Solanaceae family. That's white potatoes, peppers, green peppers, hot peppers, red pepper, all the peppers, paprika, tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, potatoes, ashwagandha, goji berries. There's also a Chinese herb, so gochitsa. Oh my God, I can't think of what the branch of gochitsa is. Not Yushing Sao, not Yimu Sao. I don't know, I can't think of it. And so that is a major, and so it's in flavorings, it's French fries, it's hummus dip, it's in pre-made soup blends, that those will frequently, if you don't eat, and I say that, it could be gluten, it could be corn, it could be dairy. It's usually whatever you consume the most of. But I will say, I bet you half the cases I've seen have been a nightshade sensitivity. Tobacco will be an aggravator. And you're like, I don't smoke. But if your significant other does, then tobacco can be an aggravator. Tobacco is a nightshade. A lot of people forget that. Tomatillas, ground cherries, all of those are in the nightshade family. So looking to see if there's a food trigger to it can literally by itself put it into remission. The stressors is a harder one, and it could be a stressful job where, like, some people love the excitement of like a stockbroker kind of thing. That is my worst nightmare. Like high pressure, high stress, sales. That would probably give me some autoimmune disorder or kill me, one of the two. And so if your day-to-day job, it's like, I can't afford to leave, it's paying the bills, but it's also killing you at the same time. It can be that. Stressful relationships obviously can do it. And so identifying those stressors, and there's two ways, like, yay, quit your job, get out of that crappy relationship. That's easy to say, but not always easy to do. So if you can't change the stressors in the system, we need to find daily ways to manage that stress. And exercise can be that. Meditation, yoga, qigong, Limbias, like we were talking about earlier, are all possibilities for that. And as we start to look at the herbs, it gets a little bit harder to say, ooh, this herb is good for Hashimoto's. We combine herbs together into formulas, and that's going to be based on how specific symptoms show up, and things like, we always look at the tongue and take the pulse. And so is the tongue red or pale, thin or puffy? Are there spots on it? And all the other symptoms that are completely unrelated to, like, if you're like, what are the symptoms of Hashimoto's? It's going to put these 50 symptoms up there. But it might not say knee pain, which might lead us to a different thing. It might not talk about your menses. And so how the menses manifests might lead us down a different pathway. Trying to think if there's like, oh, I usually go this direction. I would say that when it's a food, we tend to have to nourish. If it's a stressor, it creates tension or stagnation, and we have to regulate. So, and I know I'm being cagey and vague, but because there isn't a, ooh, just take the supplement, you'll be great. If it's stress, you frequently use aromatic plants. If it's food, we tend to use nourishing plants. And not to say that there isn't crossover between the two. B vitamins are a good supplement to include in this. Actually, I'll throw two possible reasons other than that. And if you've heard me ramble on here in the past, I talk about low stomach acid a lot. And so that long-term stress will affect the parasympathetic nervous system, and will cause your digestion to get messed up because it can manifest in many different messed up ways. But one of the more common ones, and I've seen this more than the last few years, more than I ever have before in my practice, that's low stomach acid. If you have low stomach acid, you can't break down your proteins properly to get the nutrients that we need, and you can't absorb your minerals. And minerals, like iodine, which I don't recommend iodine with autoimmune thyroid disorder, like hypo, classic, pure, I was born with this. Iodine can be a good, but with the autoimmune thyroid stuff, I find iodine will frequently mess things up. Not always, but it can. Iodine-rich foods like seaweeds and seafoods are safe and can be an effective way to ensure you're getting those minerals. But I always say it's like if you're eating a vaguely healthy diet, you shouldn't need extra minerals. So you're either losing them through something like diarrhea, or you're not absorbing them due to something like low stomach acid. I'm going to do a big run because it's my favorite soapbox. The other thing that can cause inability to process proteins, B12, and minerals is doing alkaline water. And I know it's popular on TikTok, but you're supposed to have stomach acid. And so if you're primarily drinking alkaline water or have a machine that's changing the pH of your water until it's like 8, 9, 10, it's making it so you can't get most of the nutrients in your body. And so sometimes just going back to good old nature provided 7.0 water, run it through a filter is fine. The other thing that can deplete your body of mineralization is reverse osmosis. Cleanest water in town, but you have to put the minerals back in. Otherwise, it kind of steals it from your body. So a pinch of sea salt. Some of the machines actually, you're dumping a bag of salt in and it does it that way. I'm a cheapskate, so I get the cheap machine that does a good job, that doesn't put the minerals in it, and just put a pinch of sea salt in. So if you're putting salt in, you shouldn't be able to taste it. So if you're like, oh, that's really tastes like ocean water, you put too much in. So you're just putting enough in, it easily breaks down, gets diffused through the water, and does a good job. B complex, I find a lot of people are very deficient in B vitamins, either because they're eating a mostly vegetarian or vegan diet, or because of the low stomach acid, they're not getting good quality proteins in sufficient quantities. So that can be an issue. The other one, and this is an easy one, so showing off my muscles, bicep on the top, triceps on the bottom, right? And so check your triceps. If it's really rough skin, like bumpy, like you've got acne or something there, that's usually indicative of essential fatty acid deficiency. And so ensuring that either in your diet you're getting lots of healthy fats like seeds and nuts, avocado, all good sources, coconut, all good sources. And I'm a big fan of seed, chia seeds, some amaranth are oftentimes good sources of that. But fish oil, if fish is okay, getting a good quality fish oil will quickly, like I can tell, it's always, I tell it myself constantly, so I apologize for this, but like if I go on an ice cream bender for a week or something, I have a thing for all the wrong foods. I'm human. I like naughty foods as well. Don't do value judgments on your food. But if I'm over consuming things that are not my friend, they're inflammatory, it goes right to my nose, you'll hear me, I'll blame it on seasonal allergies. It's probably ice cream or popcorn. You should have seen me before. I literally check this probably once a week. You'll see me checking my arm, and I'm like, oh, I've been eating too much crap. It's a little bumpy. And so I keep a bottle of fish oil around, and I'll take, like, bottle says 1 pill a day. If my ratio of omega-3, 6, and 9s are out of whack because of the crappy food, high in omega-6s, which are inflammatory generally, I need to, A, stop eating crap, but B, I need to increase in a viable amount. 1 gram of essential fatty acids, omega-3 is not enough. So I'll usually, if it's like, oh, it's a little rough today, I'll probably take 2 pills twice a day. I've gone back in the day, I was doing as high as I think 5 or 6 twice a day. And the response of the body is dramatic. Usually my bumps go away, much of the inflammation of my body goes away within 1 to 2 weeks by doing a more significant amount. So I usually start at like 2 twice a day and give that a week, see how it goes. Because when we look at hormones, and thyroid hormones, right, are now out of whack. And many of our reproductive hormones are a fat-soluble or fat-based hormone. And without fat, good fat, our cells don't receive the information, the neurotransmitters don't work right, the nerves, they like literally, those nerves, the axion gap, so there's like this microscopic space, and they're like pew 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 pew, they're spitting back and forth these negative ions back and forth of minerals, but there's like, it's like a jelly donut. There's this jelly, I'm gonna go have dessert after this, clearly. There's this jelly thing in between that is not specifically omega-3s, but it's the moistening kind of properties of our body. If that's not there, or it dries out, the gap gets a little too far, those nerves need fat. We talk about every blood cell in the body. The lipid wall is a fat wall. So all of those fats, and making sure we're getting the healthy fats, is, much as I like me some bacon, that's probably not the best fat. Oh, and I'm sorry, I see that I missed the word headaches. Oh, let me make sure I didn't miss anything else. Oh, shoot, look at that, I was sleeping on the job. I started talking. I gotta get to degenerative disc. I haven't been to Canada in a long. I loved Canada. I was up. I was up in Yukon Territory in September a while back, and had a blast. Got to hang with some of the First Nation people out there, and talk about plants I don't know. It was such a fascinating exploration of plants I was unfamiliar with. So it was super cool. All right, headaches. I got to add headaches on there. I would say that would be a really important start. Look to doing some food eliminations. Like, don't try to stop everything. Like, start with the nightshades. And so I would say, like, 2 weeks, 100% removal of one kind. It could be gluten, it could be corn, it could be nightshades. Start with the nightshades. Gluten's hard to get rid of. And start with that. Oh, cool. I think the British Columbia Herbalist Association, do you all have a conference every year? I think I've seen that. I was like, oh, that looks like a really cool conference. A lot of people I know up there. Let me know. Give me a warning, and I'll see if I can free it up to come up and talk or something. It happens occasionally. But do 2 weeks without something like nightshades, and then go have a potato, tomato, pepper salad that's huge, and see if there is a response from your body. It should be dramatic to remove this. Oh, wow. I know I won't make it this July. But holler at me for next year. The same way, or like, I didn't notice any difference, my bowels didn't change, my energy focus didn't change, then try the next thing. Try gluten. That's a pretty common one. And sometimes it comes down to whatever you eat the most of. That's usually a good start. And then look to the stressors, because like everybody's got stress. It's just sometimes we don't recognize how much stress we have. And I am running late on time, so I want to make sure degenerative disc. Now that's a tough one, honestly. So in the name gives us the energetics a lot of time. Degenerative, i.e. we're losing something, so we need to rebuild it. So as we start to see degenerative disc disease, we're talking about the spine. And it usually the low back is usually where it goes, but it can be in the neck as well as anywhere else, or in the thoracic spine. So sometimes it matters what part of the body is getting messed up. And it can be genetic, it can be hormonal, and I believe you said it was your dad. And this can be an issue for women. Men and women, we all have the same hormones. Like men have luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, women have testosterone, men have estrogen. The ratios of those hormones are different, that's all. And so for men, as they age, it's almost normal for testosterone to decline a little bit, but if it goes down too far, literally we start to see the bone weaken. That can happen for women as well. For women, we also see estrogen tends to have that effect. So, checking all the hormones is important. Always sounds stupid, poor diet. I always say things that Coca-Cola, alcohol are fast degenerators of the spine. Blood sugar tends to be a aspect of a lot of degeneration. And it's like, but my dad doesn't have diabetes. A lot of times insulin resistance is kind of what we see. And so literally, like when we look at the fasting blood sugar, it's like if you cross this magic line into 100, we start to say you're diabetic. But as long as you stay at 99 or 98, 99, even though you have all the symptoms, they don't treat you. And I would say that blood sugar should, in a perfect world, be under 95. But it gets harder as you get older, and there can be other aggravating conditions. This is another case where fat can be important. So making sure the healthy fats are getting into things. Same things about the fish oils and so forth. One for both men and women, it's oftentimes overlooked is smoking, and I don't have a good answer why, but smoking cigarettes, so tobacco, not cannabis. I've not seen the same effect from cannabis, but it seems to reduce the blood flow specifically to our hips, sacrum, and lower back, and genitals. So for impotence, it has that. And I believe in England, because they have the universal health care there, they won't do an elective surgery on you, i.e., I need a back operation, or I need a hip operation. They won't do it until you've stopped smoking for 6 months, because of the likelihood of an adverse outcome to that surgery if they're still smoking. Which kind of show, and it's specifically like if they're doing finger surgery, they maybe don't. But for low back and hips, they actually, I believe they require, I don't know if it's still true, I heard this 20 years ago, but they actually are like, we're not doing the surgery until you do that, so you better stop. So if that's an issue, get on it. Since it's your dad, although exercise has an impact, it becomes not as dramatic as we get older. For men and women, in our teen years makes the biggest impact on our bone health in general, and with diminishing returns for our efforts. That said, you can still get a 10% change in bone density at 80. So if Osteoporosis, osteopenia is part of that degenerative disc disorder. That can be an issue. This always sounds stupid. Water. Stupid tobacco. It's so hard. I ex-smoker. Sorry. It was hard to stop. Try a shock collar. Just kidding. Don't do that. But no, it is. Stop it. It's bad for you. Is generally not effective. I tend to, hypnosis worked for this person, acupuncture worked for that person, herbs worked for this person. I always tell people there's probably a 20-30% success rate with each one of those modalities. Do them all in the same 2 days. Yeah, that's it. So, all right, you got your energetics down. Good job. So I'll give you a couple of interesting ones. Mullein root is specific for the low back, and we usually think of it as aligning the low back, but we can also use that to guide to the low back. And along with the degenerative stuff, as that instability starts to happen in the spine itself, the body tends to contract the muscles. So now they got muscle spasms, they got the sciatica, there's so much crap that starts to go on. So think about things like, since you said they're deficient dry, way to go. The marshmallow root specifically, Solomon seal is phenomenal for that. Horsetail is excellent. That's all I can think of. And I would say healthy fats. And it's the problem, and I'm not picking on you, even though it's going to seem like it. It is one of the problems the way people do herbalism. We're always asking for a friend, and like for real, not wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And that friend may have no interest. In this case, your father, obviously. So we're frustrated. They're not getting better. That they're telling us how much pain they're in, or how sick they are. And we're like, I know there's an herb out there, and we and everybody else tries to recommend it. It's so important that that person seeks it out and is willing to put in the effort. Because the other question, it's one of the questions I think people forget. We are a society that takes pills. Pills are so freaking convenient. I got my herbal supplement pills. I take my multivitamin. It's a pill. None of us have pill deficiencies. And so one of the things that I always like to ask is, what form of medicine is going to be the best form for you? And they were like, I want the strongest. And I was like, no. Because the strongest is probably decocting it, boiling it, and it's going to take an hour of your time. It's going to taste like holy hell. And so you may not be willing to drink that. I'm going to pick on dudes around the world. We tend to not want to cook anything, and it better taste like pizza. And so they have to be willing. So some people are going to go like, just put in a tincture, an alcohol extraction. Or what if they can't do alcohol? Or that's too hot, because alcohol has an energetic. So maybe we need to grind it into a powder and put it in a capsule for them, and they're going to be taking a crap ton of capsules. But it is, the best form is the form that they'll do, and they have to want it as much as everybody around them wants it for them. It won't work. But the thing that they can do is get full. Going back to the thyroid can cause that too. Making sure that their doctors are testing their hormones is so important. And yes, you can do herbs and exercise and all that. Doing the compounded hormones to help to stabilize that back, whilst they make their lifestyle changes. And there's never an easy answer. And it is degenerative, so I generally don't recommend chiropractic for that, because it's too easy for that to cause harm or permanent injury. Acupuncture's, I'm biased obviously, acupuncture's pretty safe with that. And it's not going to replace bone tissue, but it can reduce the inflammation in a particular area and certainly give pain relief. Oh, and I know what I didn't mention, St. John's wort. So if he's on any medications, don't do St. John's wort internally, but you can do the oil externally. But if he's not on any meds, like nothing, he can do the St. John's wort internally. It's a phenomenal herb. But I would say hormones and stop the smoking. That's a hard sell. There are herbal smokes out there to help people taper off as well, and so he can literally roll up herbal joints or stick it in a pipe and smoke it, or bong, or whatever his jam is. Menthols, you just add some mint to it. If they're just regulars, then you can use mullein as your base, the mullein leaf. It smokes a little bit like tobacco, and you can put other herbs in there. So lobelia, not everybody knows what lobelia is, so I'm going to try to spell it. Lobelia, I think I spelled that right. Will fill the nicotine receptor sites. So as somebody's tapering off of the nicotine, but they're like, I'm jonesing for some nicotine, the use of lobelia in a tincture, in a tea, or in a smoke can be really helpful. And then using things like skullcap to help the anxiety as people are going through that process can be really helpful with all of it. And I'm going to say my computer is about to crash. Oh, headaches. I can do headaches. I've got. Oh yeah, I can do headaches. All right, I was about to cut it short, but I can do it. That'll be my last one. So I appreciate that you all hung in here and asking questions. So headaches. Boy, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Why are you getting headaches? That's always the question. And so a lot of the how come you're getting headaches, what are your triggers, but also the constitution, it will take us a long way. So some headaches are from tense condition, and so contraction. Some are from nutritional deficiencies, some are menstrual related, some are sinus related. So things that we look for, we ask a lot of questions when we see somebody for headaches. And this always sounds stupid. What makes it better or worse? Sorry, my hair's a disaster because I've been sweating all day. So if you're like, oh, I just want to press on my head, pressure feels better, like you just want to hold your head, then it's a deficiency type of headache, and nourishing needs to happen. If it's like, stay away from me, don't touch me, and there's like some irritability, then it's considered an excess condition. If somebody is aggravated, like when do they get the headaches? So, i.e., is it happen at the start of their menses, ovulation? Is it, I get headaches when I go to work. I get headaches, I always wake up with a headache. Then it might be an environmental headache, and environmental headaches tend to be more in the front and occasionally in the back, and occipital headaches, the back of the head. Stress headaches tend to be here, and it's funny, it can go either direction. The banding, like there's like, it literally feels like somebody's got a vice around your whole head and just slowly squeezing it like a grape. That can be excess or deficiency. Without a doubt, there are, I will say, headaches to include migraines are usually pretty easy to figure out and address, but it's usually formulation and really getting down to because sometimes temperature changes bring it on. It's like, oh, every time a cold front comes through, then it's sometimes like, and I'll tell my favorite story, then you literally use cold and flu herbs. It's sometimes environmental things, like it's like I wake up fine, but then I go to work and I was like, well, do you hate your job? I was like, no, I love my job. But there might be something like if you're a nail tech, that you're sitting there huffing in acetone and dust, that can be a trigger. But it can also be a sick building syndrome where there's like mold or mildew in the building, can be it. I've got one of my longtime patients. Literally, she has chemical sensitivities, and she's had to leave jobs because of Glade plugins. And so those are like, sometimes people are putting some stuff that you don't see. I don't look under desks for Glade plugins when I walk into a business. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it can be that. And so what Taylor's saying is that more Chinese perspective there, liver yang rising, where there's literally heat that's rising up, and those kinds of headaches can be rushing. They're aggravated usually by alcohol. They can be aggravated by stress. Certain foods can cause those. Food sensitivities can also cause migraines. It is good though to rule out, especially when migraines, and there's headaches like and everybody hates me for this, but like I could count on one hand how many times I've had a headache probably, and I've never had a migraine. Hallelujah, knock on something. And so I can't appreciate the severity of migraines. It is, I think I've only failed on migraines once, maybe twice in 20 plus years of treating people, and with herbs and or acupuncture. And I do like chiropractors for this, specifically folks who specialize in atlas adjustments. Those can be impactful for ones that are affected by your atlas. It's kind of like your head sits on top of your spine. It's the atlas that supports that. And you'll feel like a fool. You'll go in, you'll spend an hour with you, and they get like all of these fancy little measuring devices, and they'll go boop, and charge you $400 or $500 sometimes, and put you in a neck brace, and you're like, is this a joke? And you might have to go back and do that 3 times, but I have seen that work miracles. When other things fail, it's sometimes that. I do like imaging done to make sure you don't have some weird aneurysm happening in your brain, although that's rare. Does happen. We saw 2 people in the clinic, and I always pronounce it wrong, Chirari malformation, where basically the back of your skull is not completely formed, and like the risk is your brain falls out of the back of your head. I'm not joking, that actually, and so those folks frequently have migraines. And it was a family, and I never thought of it as genetic, but it was a mom and daughter, and they both also had celiacs. And I only knew one other person, actually I've seen a couple people with it, but the first person I ever met with the Chirari malformation also had celiacs, and I don't know if there's a correlation between that. So it is good to get the medical approach to that. But if they're just going like, I don't know, you got headaches, here's a Tylenol, or here's some really strong migraine medicine that stones you out of your gourd, I'm not a fan. So simple things, magnesium is oftentimes helpful. I know everybody talks about feverfew is good for specifically for migraines. It's actually good for kind of that liver yang migraine where you feel hot, there's heat in the brain, behind the eyes kind of thing. I like the feverfew. There's a problem though. If you went, well, I went into Walgreens and I bought some feverfew capsules, they never work. It's just a waste of money. It should be fresh, and it is nasty bitter, or fresh freeze-dried, and I'm not sure, I've not tried fresh tincture. Maybe fresh tincture would work if somebody has experience with that. But if you're using the dried herb, the efficacy, the effectiveness of it is dramatically reduced. And it is like, there are only a few herbs that are like challenging bitter for me. Feverfew is one of them. There are a number of other herbs that can be effective, but it's funny. And I'll tell my one story, and then I'm going to say some acupuncture words. Acupuncture is really a good approach, and frequently the best approach if herbs are not making it. I had a guy, and he came to me, and he'd had migraines for 20 years or something, and it was really strange. They only came when there was a low pressure system, like a tropical storm or hurricane. It was obviously here. and nobody could figure it out. He'd been to all the specialists, had plenty of money to go see all the Grand Poobahs, and he was like, man, I was working on him for like shoulder and knee and stupid stuff. And he was like, well, you can fix that. And I was like, all right. And I tried, but it was hard to tell because, like, in the wintertime, we don't have tropical systems coming through, so I couldn't figure it out then. And I did all the things that I knew. Nothing worked. And so whenever I have a case where I'm like, I like to think I have a pretty good track record on helping people, but sometimes you're like, we've been banging away at it for 3 to 5 treatments and I've made zero progress, and I don't have a clear energetic pattern that I'm like I know this will fix it. If I don't have that, I'm always like, let's stop and redo that first in-depth intake and ask all the questions. And I ended up doing that with him because I fixed everything else, could not figure out these migraines that came with tropical storms. And so I was like, do you remember the first time that you ever got that migraine headache? And I think it took him a time or two. Ooh, puppy. I think it took him a time or two before he could even remember. And he was like, I remember when it happened. There was, we have those 3-4 days before storm. It's like we watch the Weather Channel as it slowly, creeps up on us. And he was like, so I was at Home Depot. The rain had started to fall. I needed some more boards for the house. And so the first outer band, so everybody's rushing, everybody's freaking out. And he got in a car accident. And it wasn't a bad car accident, just in the parking lot, fender bender. But there was enough damage, they had to wait for the cops to make a report. And so he said, I remember being really tired doing the hurricane prep, stressed out, upset that he had been in this fender bender, even though nobody was hurt. But he said, I have an image of myself sitting on the curb in the cold rain, and as it all came down and starting to get a chill and shake. I was like, oh, you caught a cold. And it never got treated. And so crazy Chinese medicine world where we believe that wind, and it kind of goes back to the start of all of this, the spiritual aspects, that evil wind travels and attacks us through our ghost gates, through our skin cords and our upper neck and back. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, this is going to be weird. Don't look this formula up because it's not for headaches or migraines. And this was 20 years later. I gave him guizhitong, which is, sorry, I just put it in the chat, cinnamon twig. Oh, well, I spelled it wrong. Get over it. Twig formula. And it's half a dozen herbs. It's not just cinnamon. Oops. I clearly cannot type. Cinnamon twig formula. And I gave it to him for like a month. He never got another migraine. I didn't see him for like 10 years. He started coming back in about a year or so ago. And he was like, yeah, nope, haven't had a migraine since you gave me that formula. So it goes down to the how come you get these headaches or migraines, and stupid stuff. I get people who forget to take their blood pressure meds, and so their blood pressure goes through the roof, and it gives them a migraine. So that's their tell that their blood pressure's up. The few times I've actually gotten headaches, certainly not migraines, it's either a sinus headache from pizza during oak pollen season, or I get dehydrated, so I don't drink enough water, which I'm notorious for forgetting to drink water. Wind aversion is you don't like wind, so it's an invasion if it's come through. Aversion to wind is more of a qi deficiency sign. So guizhitong is for wind invasion with an underlying qi deficiency. Sorry for all of those who don't speak Chinese gibberish. But yeah, so cinnamon twig is for I have an aversion to wind, i.e. I don't like a draft blowing on me. In his case, he was exhausted, and he's qi deficient too, and the stress of that, they probably stressing out over the hurricane and then getting a wind cold, because all of us can get sick. So I just had to drive out that wind cold, and he was fine. I was going to say acupressure stuff. So for my students, you all see me do magic tricks sometimes when people have certain pain or headaches in the body. And for any of you who are also acupuncturists or at acupuncture school, I think this is it's, I won't say advanced, but it's a different technique sometimes. I always say, if you're going to put sharp metal rods in somebody's body, it ought to do something pretty dramatic. So one of the things that a lot of cultures do, Chinese, Western, and so forth, we take the pulse. Yes, my hands are dirty. Sorry, I've been playing in the dirt all day long, clean the palm. So we take the pulse, and we do it a little different. We do both arms, we do 3 positions, 3 depths, a gazillion different pulse qualities. And so if somebody has a unique pulse, and I stick a metal rod in their body, the pulse should change, like almost instantaneously. It might not be dramatic, but it should be noticeable. And I also believe that if we go on within Chinese medicine, we have the channel theory. So the way these meridians, these lines of energy where there's acupuncture points along them, the way they flow to the body. So the eyes, we see the liver and gallbladder channels go through the eye. And so when you have a migraine, a lot of people will describe it as an ice pick, in the back of their eye, super painful, sensitive to light, all that kind of stuff. So I should be able to press on either some points on the liver or gallbladder channel and affect that pain. Not go away, but it will change. And so folks who have been in with the clinic with me, I'll press on a point and I'll go, same, better, worse. And so if it makes it worse, that ain't right. But I'll find the opposite channel will oftentimes work. Or some people will say, like, it changed, or it moved, or it lessened. I was like, oh, I'm on the right channel, but maybe I chose the right point, maybe I chose the wrong point. So as a general rule, when we're working with acupressure, and I'll show you actually, my favorite thing to use is, I was playing with them earlier, is magnets, but you can use essential oils, you can use all kinds of stuff. Oh, what just happened? Oh well. I literally pulled the magnets out so I had something to write on. But the magnets, oh, there we go. So I just use these little stick-on magnets. There's one open here. By the way, for any of you, I always carry ear seeds and magnets. If I have my backpack with me, I'm always happy to put them on. So literally it's like a little Band-Aid with either a gold, this is a gold-plated magnet, and that's for nourishing, or a unplated, and it's kind of a silvery black color, is more for reducing, so for things that are excessive. So I will put those on the points, and usually within a few minutes there is a dramatic improvement in whatever it is. But in the case of headaches, it's usually pretty easy. And also, if you've got a headache that doesn't feel good with pressure, that means it's an excess headache. And so I wouldn't want to put them around where there's already too much. Why would I bring more energy there? So we usually go to the furthest end of the body, the feet or the legs or the lower arms, in order to move those. The most common ones, and you guys are going to have to look this up on your own. If you Google this, it'll come up. The acupuncture points, liver 3, gallbladder 41 are on the feet. Sanjiao 5 or 6 right here on the arm, or Li4, which is right here on the hand, and those are bilateral, so it's on both hands on all of those points. Those are my first choice. Most likely those will work. Oh, nice. If I'm like, I can't believe none of those worked, I'll try kidney 3 and urinary bladder 60, and I'm not going to bend my body to try to show you where those are on my leg. And after that, I just start to poke around and guess because I have no idea, and sometimes I figure it out, but sometimes no. If you try each one of those points, mash on them for a second and say same, better, worse, I'm going to say 95% of the time you will get relief. Use something to continue to stimulate those. That can be pressure, that can be essential oils with a carrier oil. I like the magnets because then I don't have to sit there and walk around with them all day long. And only occasionally do they have a reaction to those, chemical sensitivities and things like that. But any and all of those, if you want, can have a dramatic effect. So I'm going to wrap this up before my computer dies, and it's almost 8 o'clock. We do this the last Friday of every month from 6 to 8 p.m. So you can send in your questions ahead of time, Western, Chinese, I don't care. I speak all the gibberish.